We're not as far apart as we may think. Sometimes the very things that make us feel like outsiders are what others need to see in order to feel welcome too. Like many people, I come from a blend of cultures: Comanche, Jewish, Scottish, Irish, Northwestern European. It's strange to carry more than one history in your bones. Sometimes it feels like being a handwritten letter in a world of templates, each line penned by different voices. I didn't grow up immersed in all of those identities. Some were loud, others whispered through stories or a photograph here and there. But even the quiet ones, they shaped me. They shaped how I speak, how I listen, how I carry myself in spaces that don't quite feel like my own. Sometimes that mix felt like a gift. Sometimes it felt like a question with no easy answer. But over time, I stopped asking whether I belonged in one world or another and started realizing that I was living a bridge between them. Being mixed doesn't mean being confused. It means being textured. It means you learn to hear what others may miss. You see layers others likely pass by. You grow fluent in nuance because you've lived it. And maybe you felt that too. That ache of trying to belong where you don't truly fit. Or the weight of being told you have to pick a side. But here's what I've come to believe. The difference isn't a flaw to be corrected. It's a thread that weaves connection when we stop seeing identity as division and start seeing it as dialogue. We don't just accept each other, we begin to understand each other. What parts of your story have you been taught to shrink a little bit in order to be accepted? Lawrence lived in England all of his life. He liked familiar things: slow mornings, gray skies, and warm tea. He liked knowing what to expect and what was expected of him. So when he accepted a job in the United States, he didn't really worry that much. They speak English, he thought. How different could it actually be? Well, he arrived in a city that was louder than anything he had known before. The people there talked with their hands. They interrupted. They laughed like thunder and didn't seem to mind. They asked, "How are you?" and often walked away before he could even get the answer out. Lawrence tried to match the rhythms. He mimicked their jokes. He smiled wider than usual. He tried new phrases like "awesome" and "you got it." No worries. But none of it felt natural. It was like wearing a jacket one size too small. And most days, he just felt invisible. Other days, he felt out of place. And then one Tuesday, it happened. He spilled coffee on a customer at the cafe that he worked at, and he braced himself. "I'm terribly sorry," he said, his heart pounding in his chest. But the woman, she just smiled. "It's all right, love. No harm done." And that one word, love, took him home in an instant. "You sound like my aunt," he said, startled. She just laughed. "Where are you from?" And just like that, the wall between them fell. They talked about accents, grandparents, the smell of Sunday cooking. Her family came from Barbados, his from Yorkshire. but both had stories told in kitchens, gardens, and song. That afternoon, it didn't solve anything, but it cracked something open. Lawrence began listening differently, not not for how to fit in, but for what people made and what it took to make them feel like home. He noticed kindness in the boldness. He found warmth in the volume. He saw that generosity could wear sneakers, not just suits. He saw laughter used as welcome, hands used to punctuate stories, silence used not to dismiss, but to hold space. It was all different, but none of it was wrong. And slowly, something changed. People started seeking him out, not because he became like them, but because he was himself. He brought steadiness, patience, a different kind of humor. Have you ever felt more like yourself when you stopped trying to blend in? Lawrence's story reminds us of a truth many of us discover only by living through it. Sameness is not a requirement for connection. He didn't need to abandon his culture to belong. He needed to believe that who he already was had value, even in unfamiliar soil. And what happened when he began showing up that way, authentic, steady, quietly, and honestly, is that others just responded. Not because he had the right words or gestures, but because he was offering something real. We often think we have to over-adapt to earn our place. So we mimic accents, pick up slang, change how we move or speak, or even laugh. But belonging doesn't demand imitation. It thrives in integration. Lawrence learned that warmth can sound differently, that hospitality can look unfamiliar, that affection wears many dialects, and that his perspective was a gift, not an obstacle. What felt like awkwardness in the belonging turned out to be contrast, and contrast often will bring clarity. His presence helped others slow down. His careful way of speaking gave others permission to listen more closely. He didn't erase himself, he made room. And in doing so, he offered a model for something rare, mutual belonging. And that's the quiet shift. We don't just get used to each other, we grow deeper together. The table doesn't need to be the same. It needs to stay long enough to see what we're all bringing. We each carry stories that don't need to be rewritten, only shared. And when we share from a place of humility and courage, we create bridges where walls used to stand. Where in your life might contrast become a place of connection instead of conflict? I used to think that I had to choose, pick one side of my story, be one thing, speak one way, stand in one circle, and stay there. Because being a blend made people uncomfortable. Sometimes it made me uncomfortable too. When I walked into rooms, I'd watch myself, soften my voice, edit my words, smile more, explain less, as if being different came with a manual for pleasing everyone else. But here's what I learned through the years of shrinking. You can't build trust on erasure. Not with others, not with yourself. I started listening to the parts of me I had ignored. the rhythms of ancestors I had silenced out of a fear of being misunderstood. And something began to return. Voice, posture, a kind of peace I hadn't known I'd lost. Being mixed doesn't mean you're a puzzle missing pieces. It means you are the whole picture. And it might take time for others to see it, and that's okay. But you're not alone. I see you. I see the way you carry those multiple cultures like rivers flowing into one heart. I see the courage it takes to be misunderstood and stay kind anyway. I see the strength in your layers, and I see how powerful it is when someone chooses to understand you, not change you. Understanding doesn't require sameness. It just asks for presence. And that presence, whether in a smile, a question, or a shared cup of coffee, can turn a stranger into a friend. What part of yourself are you still learning to offer without apology? When we treat differences like danger, we close the door on connection. But when we treat all of those differences like discovery, everything changes. It's easy to fear what we don't understand, to feel uneasy when someone's customs or expressions don't mirror our own. But that discomfort, it's often the beginning of growth, if we're willing to stay with it long enough. You don't have to know everything about someone else's background to connect with them. You just have to care enough to ask, to listen without judgment, to hold space without rushing in to explain cultural differences or showing up in different ways than they're used to. It's in eye contact, in humor, in silence, in food, in how we show respect or how we grieve or what we consider polite. When we become aware of that, we become softer, more curious, less reactive. We stop expecting everyone to show love the way we do. We start asking, what does this mean to you? Instead of, why do you do it like that? That question alone can change everything. Because the moment someone feels safe to be seen, they stop bracing. And when they stop bracing, they start opening. And that's where real connection lives. You don't need to erase yourself to make some more space for someone else. You don't need others to be like you to feel close to them. In fact, it's often the contrast that deepens the bond. The more we welcome difference, the more whole we all become. And not just in theory, but in practice. In shared meals, in hard conversations, in honoring each other's traditions, even when they're very far from our own. So if you've ever wondered whether your story is too different to matter, let me say this, it's not. It may be the very thing that makes someone else feel like they finally belong. Where might you build a bridge this week that can destroy those boundaries? You don't have to become someone else to be loved. Your differences are not disruptions in life. They're doors. Lawrence didn't find his place by changing. He found it by remaining, by standing in his own rhythm and offering it again and again until it was received. You can do that too. You can Stand in the full story of who you are, even if you tremble a little while doing it. You don't have to explain your whole background in one breath. Just be present. Let your story unfold naturally. The way rivers shape rocks, not quickly, but undeniably. And when someone doesn't understand, don't shrink. Don't disappear. Lean in. Ask them something in return. Tell them how rosemary reminds you of your grandmother's garden, or how your grandmother hummed old hymns while cooking. Or maybe how you learn to read in 2 different languages, and both still live inside you. Give them a glimpse. They may not relate at first, but they'll feel it. And that's how bridges are built. Not by agreement, but by offering what is real. You're not too different. You're just carrying something they haven't seen before. You're not alone. I very much see you. And I hope you know how needed that you actually are. What could shift in your life if you started offering your differences instead of hiding them? There's a kind of table the world is still learning how to build. It's not polished, it's not matching, but it's wide and it's strong. And there's a chair for you at it. Some of those chairs are hand carved. Others are plastic, scuffed by years of being dragged across kitchen tiles. But they all belong. Not because the people in them agree, but because they're committed to staying at the table anyway. And your story belongs there. Your voice, your tone, your traditions, your silence. Not as decoration, but as direction, as something that shapes the way we all move forward. So when you walk into a room and feel the urge to shrink, just pause for a minute and remember, the table doesn't need more of the same. It needs the truth, spoken gently, lived honestly, and shared freely. So just sit down, receive someone else's. Let connection bloom where contrast once scared you. And in that, what might happen if you started pulling up a chair instead of walking away? Remember, it may not always be who we are, but it can be about who we want to be. Thank you for watching.